My father shattered my car window while my children screamed in the back seat, all because I earned the promotion his golden child refused to work for. He thought intimidation would break me, but he didn't realize my lawyer was watching the whole time. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. I was sitting in the dark of my home office, the glow of the laptop screen the only light in the room, shivering under a thick wool blanket. I wasn't just cold, I was physically wrecked. A nasty viral infection had swept through my house earlier in the week, taking down my 2 children first, and now, finally, it had come for me. My head felt like it was stuffed with cotton, and every joint in my body ached with a dull, throbbing persistence. But despite the fever chills and the exhaustion that threatened to pull me under, I couldn't stop staring at the email open on my screen. It was official. Dear Louise, we are pleased to inform you that you have been selected for the position of Senior Director of Operations. I read the line 3 times, my eyes burning. This wasn't just a job. This was the culmination of 15 years of grit, late nights, missed holidays, and working twice as hard to get half the recognition in a male-dominated industry. I had started as an administrative assistant, fetching coffee for men who couldn't remember my name, and I had clawed my way up, certification by certification, project by project. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding, a ragged sound in the quiet room. Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes, not just from the sickness, but from the sheer relief. I had done it. I had actually done it. I reached for my phone, my hand trembling slightly. The first instinct, the one ingrained in me since childhood, was to call my parents. It was a reflex I hadn't managed to kill, despite years of therapy and decades of disappointment. I wanted them to be proud. Just once, I wanted to hear my father, Christopher, say, "Good job, Lou." I dialed the number. It rang 4 times before my mother, Rachel, picked up. "Hello," her voice was distracted, the sound of the television blaring in the background. "Hey, Mom," I croaked, my voice raspy. "It's me. I have some news." "Oh, Louise, you sound terrible. Are you still sick? I told you that you work too hard, it wears down your immune system." There was no sympathy in it, just that familiar, subtle criticism that I didn't know how to take care of myself. "I'm fine, Mom, just a bug. But listen, I got the email. I got the promotion. I'm the new senior director." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. It wasn't a stunned silence of joy. It was a heavy, loaded pause that sucked the air out of the room. I waited, my heart hammering against my ribs, hoping against hope that she would just say congratulations. "Mom," I asked, my voice wavering. "Does Kyle know?" The question hit me like a physical slap. Not congratulations, not I'm proud of you, just does Kyle know? I don't know," I stammered. "I just found out 5 minutes ago. Why would Kyle know?" "He applied for a position at your firm, Louise," Rachel said, her tone dropping to a whisper, as if she were protecting a state secret. "Christopher told him he was a shoo-in. He's been waiting by the phone all week." My stomach churned, a nauseating mix of the flu and anxiety. "Mom, Kyle applied for a junior logistics role. I got the director position. They are completely different departments. My promotion has nothing to do with him." "Well," she sighed, a long, martyred sound. "You know how your father gets. He's going to be devastated for Kyle. Your brother really needed a win right now, Louise. He's been having such a hard time since that business with the cryptocurrency fell through." "I worked for this for 15 years, Mom," I whispered, the fight draining out of me. I know," she dismissed. "But maybe just don't mention it to your father yet. Let him have a quiet evening. He's been so stressed about Kyle's future." I hung up the phone without saying goodbye. I sat there in the dark, the joy of the email turning to ash in my mouth. I should have known better. In the ecosystem of my family, my success was only ever measured by how much it overshadowed Kyle's failures. 2 hours later, my phone lit up again. It wasn't a call. It was a text message from my father, Christopher. I stared at the preview on the lock screen, and the blood ran cold in my veins. It wasn't a congratulatory text. It wasn't even a question. It was a declaration of war. "You selfish, ungrateful girl. I just got off the phone with Kyle. He's crying. You stole his future. Don't think I'm going to let this slide. You fix this or I will." I dropped the phone onto the desk as if it were red hot. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis itself. It wasn't just that they didn't love me enough to celebrate me. It was that they actively viewed my success as a theft from the son who had never worked a real day in his life. The next morning, the sun rose with a cruel brightness that hurt my eyes. I had barely slept. Between the fever breaking in sweats and the knot of anxiety in my chest, I felt like a ghost haunting my own house. I dragged myself out of bed to get the kids ready for school. Leo, my 7-year-old, and Maya, my 5-year-old, were bouncing off the walls, completely recovered from their 24-hour bug. Their energy was a stark contrast to the heavy dread settling in my gut. As I packed their lunchboxes, cutting the crusts off sandwiches just the way they liked, my mind kept replaying my father's text. "You fix this, or I will." What did he expect me to do? Resign? Hand my degree and my 15 years of experience over to Kyle, a man who had dropped out of 3 different colleges and recently lost his savings on a guaranteed investment scheme? The absurdity of it made me want to laugh, but I knew Christopher wasn't joking. In his world, Kyle was the protagonist, and the rest of us were just supporting characters meant to facilitate his journey. I dropped the kids at school and drove to the office, despite still feeling weak. I couldn't stay home. My house felt exposed, unsafe. I needed the sterility of the corporate glass and steel. When I walked onto my floor, the atmosphere was electric. My team had evidently heard the news. There were balloons tied to my chair, silver and gold, and a card signed by everyone in the department sitting on my keyboard. "Congrats, boss." Sarah, my junior analyst, beamed at me as she walked past with a stack of files. "We knew you'd get it. There wasn't even a competition." I forced a smile, thanking her, but I felt like an imposter. Here, I was respected. I was the capable leader who managed multi-million-dollar budgets and navigated complex union negotiations. But the moment my phone buzzed in my pocket, I was just the disappointment daughter. It was Kyle. I let it go to voicemail. I couldn't handle his whining today. I sat down and tried to focus on the transition plan for the new role, but 10 minutes later, the receptionist called my desk. "Louise, there's a gentleman here to see you. He says he's your brother. He doesn't have an appointment, but he's insisting it's a family emergency." My heart stopped. He had come to my workplace. This was a boundary they had never crossed before. "Send him away, Jen," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Tell him I'm in meetings all day. If he causes a scene, call security." "Okay," he looks pretty agitated, Louise. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." I hung up and stared at the dark screen of my phone. They were escalating. Usually, the guilt trips were confined to Sunday dinners or passive-aggressive emails. Showing up at my job was a new level of aggression. I opened my laptop bag and pulled out my personal tablet. I opened an app that connected to the cloud server of my car's dashcam. It was a high-end model I'd installed 6 months ago after a minor hit-and-run in a parking lot. It recorded interior and exterior audio and video, uploading it in real time. I checked the feed. My car was sitting peacefully in the parking garage. Then, I remembered something else. The new contract for the director position came with a corporate legal retainer. I had a meeting scheduled with the company lawyer, Mr. Henderson, later that afternoon to go over the liability clauses. I took a deep breath. My father and brother thought they were dealing with the old Louise, the one who cried in her room and apologized for things she didn't do. They thought they could bully me into submission because I craved their approval. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. I wasn't just a daughter anymore. I was a mother, and I was a professional who managed risk for a living. I had stopped looking for their approval years ago. Now, I was only looking for protection. And while they were playing checkers with emotional outbursts, I had been quietly setting up a chessboard they didn't even know existed. To understand why my father's text was so terrifying, you have to understand the history of Christopher and his king, Kyle. My father, Christopher, was a man of the old school in the worst possible way. He believed that men were the architects of the world and women were the interior decorators. He had worked in mid-level management his whole life, bitter that he never ascended to the C-suite, and he had poured all his thwarted ambition into Kyle. Kyle was born 5 years after me. From the moment he arrived, I became invisible. If I got straight A's, it was expected. If Kyle got a C-, it was because the teacher didn't understand his creative genius. I worked through college, holding due. 2 jobs to pay my tuition so I wouldn't be a burden. Kyle went to a private university fully funded by my parents' retirement savings, partied for 2 years, and then dropped out because the system was stifling him. When I bought my first house, a modest fixer-upper, my father criticized the neighborhood. When Kyle wanted to start a luxury t-shirt brand, my father took out a second mortgage on their home to fund it. The business failed in 6 months because Kyle spent the inventory money on a trip to Chelum. And who picked up the pieces? I did. I was the one who paid my parents' utility bills when the second mortgage payments got too high. I was the one who helped Kyle write his resumes, which were mostly works of fiction. I was the one who used my professional network to get him interviews, only for him to blow them off or show up hungover. But this time was different. I met Mr. Henderson, the company lawyer, at 2:00 p.m. He was a sharp man in his 50s with eyes that didn't miss a thing. We went over the contract, but toward the end, I hesitated. Mr. Henderson, I started. Hypothetically, if a family member were to harass an employee on company property regarding a hiring decision, does the firm have a protocol for that? He looked up from his papers, removing his glasses. Is this about the young man who was in the lobby earlier? Security mentioned a Kyle trying to bypass the badge readers. I felt the blood drain from my face. Kyle hadn't just left when Jen told him to, he had tried to sneak in. Yes, I admitted, shame burning my cheeks. My brother and my father, they are unhappy that I received this promotion. They believe it should have gone to my brother despite him not being qualified. Mr. Henderson leaned back, steepling his fingers. Louise, you are a high-value asset to this firm. This car you drive, is it the company lease included in your new package? Technically, the transfer of the lease happens on Monday, but yes, it's the company car. Then any damage to it, or any threat made to you while operating it, is a direct offense against the corporation, he said calmly. If you feel threatened, you call me. Immediately. Do not engage. Let us handle the liability. I left the office feeling a strange mix of fear and validation. My phone rang again on the drive to pick up the kids. This time, I answered via the car's Bluetooth. Hello, Dad, I said, my voice tight. You have some nerve, Christopher's voice boomed through the speakers. He sounded drunk or close to it. Ignoring your brother, barring him from your building. Do you have any idea how humiliated he is? He told his friends he had that job. He never had the job, Dad. He didn't even get an interview. He's not qualified. He's a man, Christopher shouted. He has potential. You're just a paper pusher. You think you're special because you tricked some HR department? You need to fix this, Louise. You call them and you tell them you can't take the role. Tell them you have health issues. Tell them to look at Kyle's application again. No, I said firmly. Excuse me. I said no, I earned this. Kyle needs to grow up. There was a silence on the line that was colder than ice. When Christopher spoke again, his voice was dangerously low. You don't say no to me, little girl. You've forgotten your place. You think that fancy title protects you? I made you, and I can break you. You're coming over for dinner tonight to apologize to your brother, or you're going to regret it. I'm not coming over, Dad. I'm going home to my children. We'll see about that, he sneered. You really don't know who you're dealing with, do you? I'm your father, I own you." The line went dead. I pulled up to the school pickup line, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I looked in the rearview mirror as Leo and Maya climbed into the back seat, their innocent chatter filling the air. "Mommy, look at my drawing," Maya squealed. I smiled at her in the mirror, but my eyes were scanning the parking lot. I saw a familiar silver sedan parked across the street. My father's car. He was watching. He wasn't just venting, he was hunting. I tapped the screen on my dashboard, ensuring the recording light was active. Then, I put my earbuds in and dialed a number. "Mr. Henderson," I whispered, "I think I'm going to need that help sooner than we thought." I watched my father's silver sedan sit idling across the street from the school for a long, breath-holding moment. Leo and Maya were buckling their seatbelts, oblivious to the predator lurking 50 yards away. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage, but my hands, my project manager hands, were steady as I shifted the gear into drive. I didn't go straight home. I couldn't. If he was following me, I couldn't lead him to the one place where I was supposed to feel safe, not until I had a plan. Instead, I turned right, heading toward the busy downtown N District, weaving through traffic with a precision born of adrenaline. I kept checking the rearview mirror. The silver sedan pulled out, but a red light caught him. I made 2 quick turns, ducked into a crowded supermarket parking lot, and waited. 5 minutes passed. He didn't appear. I let out a shaky breath, turning to look at the kids. "Hey guys, change of plans. We're going to have a picnic dinner in the living room tonight. Does that sound fun?" They cheered, their innocence a stark contrast to the dark strategy forming in my mind. As I drove the rest of the way home, taking a convoluted route, the fear began to calcify into something colder, harder. Anger. He's hunting me, I thought. My own father is hunting me because I succeeded. When we finally got inside the house, I locked the door, deadbolt, chain, and the handle lock. I engaged the security system I usually only used when I went on vacation. I set the kids up with a movie and marched into my office. I needed leverage. Christopher acted like he was the king of the castle, the ultimate authority, but I knew the foundations of his kingdom were rotten. Rachel had mentioned Kyle's crypto losses. My mother was a terrible liar, but she was an excellent parrot. She repeated whatever narrative Christopher fed her. But the timeline didn't add up. The market hadn't crashed the week she claimed he lost the money. I opened my laptop. Years ago, before I learned to set boundaries, I had been the executor of their estate planning and had access to manage their retirement accounts because technology is too hard. I had removed myself as an active user 3 years ago, but I knew my father. He never changed passwords. Ever. I navigated to their bank's portal. I typed in his username, ChrisBuilder55, and the password, Kyle1992. It worked. I clicked into the transaction history, and my jaw dropped. The crypto investment wasn't a lump sum transfer to an exchange. It was a slow, hemorrhaging bleed. Hundreds of withdrawals at ATMs inside a local casino. Transfers to a quintessential debt consolidation agency. And then, the kicker. A massive 5-figure transfer to a bail bondsman in a neighboring county 3 months ago. Kyle hadn't lost money on bad luck. He had gambled it away, gotten into trouble, and my parents had bailated him out, literally. I kept digging. I pulled up the public court records for that county. There it was, Kyle R. Peterson, arrested for disorderly conduct and assault. The charges were dropped, likely paid off by the victim, but the mugshot was there. I sat back, the glow of the screen illuminating the room. This was the hard time Rachel was talking about, not a market crash, a criminal spiral. And then I found something that made my blood run cold. In the bank documents section, there was a scanned copy of a loan application from 2 weeks ago. A home improvement loan for my parents' house. But looking at the digital signature, it wasn't my father's jagged scrawl. It was smooth, looped. It was Kyle's handwriting trying to look like Christopher's. Kyle was bleeding them dry, and Christopher was letting him hold the knife. My phone buzzed. A text from Mr. Henderson, the lawyer. Louise, I've run the preliminary background check on the individual Kyle regarding the security breach. We need to talk. The situation is more volatile than just a jealous sibling. Call me when you are safe. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the witness, and I was about to turn into the prosecutor. I didn't have time to call Mr. Henderson back. The sound of tires crunching on gravel outside my window froze me in my chair. I pulled up the exterior camera feed on my second monitor. The silver sedan was in my driveway. Christopher slammed the driver's door, his face a mask of red fury. Rachel was getting out of the passenger side, looking small and terrified, clutching her purse like a shield. They didn't knock. Christopher began pounding on the front door with the flat of his hand, a rhythmic, violent thudding that shook the frame. Louise, open this door, I know you're in there. I rushed to the living room, ensuring the kids were still wearing their noise-canceling headphones for their video game. Stay here, guys, I said, forcing a smile that felt like it might crack my face. Grandma and Grandpa are being loud. I'm going to talk to them. I walked to the front door, but didn't open it. I left the heavy chain engaged and cracked it open 3 inches. The smell of my father's cheap cologne and stale anger drifted in. Let us in, Christopher demanded, pushing his face into the gap. No, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. You're upset and you're scaring the children. Say what you need to say from there. You disrespectful, Christopher started, raising his hand as if to shove the door, but Rachel grabbed his arm. Christopher, stop, she pleaded, then looked at me through the crack, her eyes wet. Louise, please, just juice. T declined the job. Your father is so worried about Kyle. He's in a bad place. If you take this director role, it proves to everyone that Kyle failed. It humiliates him. Kyle humiliated himself, Mom, I said, looking directly at her. And he didn't lose that money in crypto. The silence on the porch was instant. Christopher stiffened. I know about the casino, Dad, I pressed, playing my card. I know about the ATM withdrawals. I know about the bail bondsman 3 months ago. And I know about the loan application from 2 weeks ago. Did you sign that, Dad? Or did Kyle sign it for you? Christopher's face went from red to a pale, dangerous purple. You hacked my accounts. I checked to see why my parents were desperate enough to demand I quit my job to soothe a grown man's ego. I shot back. He's stealing from you, and you're blaming me for his failure. It is family money, Christopher roared, spitting as he screamed. It belongs to him as much as it belongs to me. If he needs it, he takes it. That is how loyalty works, something you wouldn't know anything about. Loyalty, I laughed, a bitter, sharp sound. He forged your signature on a $40,000 loan, Dad. That's not loyalty, that's a felony. I authorized it, Christopher lied, though his eyes darted away fast. I told him to do it because I trust him. Unlike you, hiding behind your locks and your fancy corporate lawyers, you think you're better than him. I am employed, Dad, I am stable, and I am not a criminal. You are nothing? He slammed his fist against the doorframe, making the wood splinter. You are nothing without my name. You are going to call your boss right now, and you are going to resign. And then you are going to give Kyle the keys to that new car in the driveway. He has an interview tomorrow in the city, and his truck is broken. He needs to look professional. I stared at him, incredulous. You want me to give him my company car? It's the least you can do after stealing his job. He needs a win, Louise. Give him the car for the week. No. If you don't, Christopher hissed, leaning in so close his nose touched the door jamb, I will make sure you have no family left. No parents. No cousins. I will tell everyone what a greedy, backstabbing witch you are. I will cut you out of the will, out of the photos, out of everything. You already have, I whispered. Then I slammed the door and threw the deadbolt. This isn't over, he screamed from the other side. I'm coming back tomorrow. You better have those keys ready, or so help me God, Louise, I'll take them myself. I didn't sleep. I spent the night sitting in the hallway outside my children's bedrooms, holding my phone like a weapon. At 7, 00 a.m., Mr. Henderson called via video link. I answered on my laptop in the kitchen, dark circles carved under my eyes. "Morning, Louise," he said, his tone grave. "I'm going to skip the pleasantries. My investigator pulled the court records on your brother. The bail bond you saw, it was for assault, yes, but do you know who he assaulted?" "No," I said, clutching my coffee mug. "His former boss at the landscaping company he worked for last summer. He was caught stealing equipment to pawn, and when the owner confronted him, Kyle attacked him. The only reason he isn't in prison is because the owner agreed to a settlement, which I assume is where your parents' retirement money went." I felt sick. My father is protecting a violent criminal. "It gets worse," Henderson continued. "Kyle is currently flagged in the regional construction database. If he stepped foot on one of our sites, our insurance would be voided. Louise, your father asking you to give him your job isn't just nepotism, it's an impossibility. Kyle is unhireable." "He wants the car," I said numbly. "He said he's coming back this morning to take the car for Kyle." "He cannot take that car," Henderson said, his voice sharpening into professional steel. "That vehicle is the property of the corporation. If he takes it, it is grand theft auto. If he forces you to give it to him, it is carjacking. He thinks it's a family dispute. He doesn't think the rules apply to him." "Then we need to show him that they do." Henderson looked at me through the screen. "Louise, are you safe right now?" I don't know. "I need you to listen to me. I am initiating a priority protection protocol. I want you to go to your car, get inside, lock the doors. Do not drive away yet, just sit there. I need you to connect your phone to the dashcam system so I have a live feed. If he arrives, I will be a witness. If he touches that car, he is attacking the corporation." "You want me to bait him?" "I want you to document him. He has threatened you. He has a history of enabling violence. We need irrefutable proof to get a restraining order that actually sticks. We need him to do exactly what he threatened to do on camera." It was the terrifying logic of the leg. Al whirled. To stop the monster, you had to let the monster show his teeth. I got the kids ready. "We're going to sit in the car for a bit and wait for the police officer to come say hi," I told them, keeping my voice light. "It's a special safety drill." I ushered them into the back seat, buckling them in tight. I handed them their tablets and turned the volume up. I climbed into the driver's seat and locked the doors. I synced my phone to the dashboard. A small green light indicated the camera was rolling. On my phone screen, Mr. Henderson's face appeared. "I'm here, Louise. I'm recording the stream. The police have been notified that a situation is likely, but they are 10 minutes out." I waited. It didn't take long. At 8:15 a.m., the silver sedan screeched into the driveway, blocking me in. Christopher didn't just step out of the car, he launched himself out of it. And he wasn't empty-handed. In his right hand, he gripped a heavy, rusted tire iron. He didn't look like my father anymore. He looked like a stranger possessed by a demon of entitlement. He marched toward my car, his eyes locked on mine through the windshield. "I told you," he roared, the sound muffled by the glass but still terrifyingly audible. "I told you to have the keys ready." My heart stopped. I looked at the phone screen. "Keep the doors locked, Louise," Mr. Henderson said calmly in my ear. "Do not open the window. Look at me. You are doing great." Christopher reached the driver's side window. He banged on the glass with his fist. "Open it. Give me the keys. Kyle has an interview in 20 minutes. I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. "Go away, Dad, please." "You selfish brat." He raised the tire iron. "You think you can hoard everything for yourself, while your brother starves? This is my car. I paid for your life. I own this." "He's going to swing," Mr. Henderson said, his voice urgent. "Louise, lean away from the glass, cover your face." I threw my arm up, curling my body toward the center console, shielding my head. "Open the door," Christopher screamed. And then he swung. The sound wasn't a crash, it was an explosion. The tire iron connected with the driver's side window with a violence that shook the entire frame of the car. For a split second, the safety glass held, spiderwebbing into a million opaque diamonds before it caved inward. Shards of glass sprayed across my lap, stinging my arms and cheek like angry hornets. In the back seat, Leo and Maya screamed, a high, piercing sound of pure terror that cut through me sharper than any glass shard. "Open the door," Christopher bellowed, reaching his hand through the jagged hole, his fingers grappling for the interior lock, ignoring the blood dripping from his wrist where the glass had sliced him. "Give me the keys, you ungrateful." "Hey," I screamed, batting his hand away, adrenaline flooding my system. "Get back, get away from my children." "I am taking this car." He was feral, his eyes bulging, completely detached from reality. He managed to pop the lock and yanked the door open. The cold morning air rushed in, carrying the scent of his madness. He grabbed my arm, his grip bruising. "Get out, now." "Mr. Henderson," I shouted at the dashboard. "Now." Suddenly, a voice boomed through the car's premium surround sound speakers. Loud, authoritative, and godlike in its volume. "This is Michael Henderson, legal counsel for the Arlington Group. You are committing a felony assault on a corporate officer. Law enforcement is 30 seconds away. Step away from the vehicle immediately." Christopher froze. The disembodied voice coming from the car itself seemed to short-circuit his rage. He looked around wildly, as if God himself were speaking from the clouds. "Who said that?" he stammered, his grip on my arm loosening slightly. "You are being recorded," the voice thundered again. "Video and audio are being streamed directly to the police dispatch and my office. Let go of Mrs. Louise Danvers. Now." At that moment, the wail of sirens cut through the morning air, growing louder by the second. Blue and red lights bounced off the houses across the street. Neighbors were pouring out onto their porches. Mrs. Gable from next door, the young couple from across the street, even the mail carrier who had just pulled up. Christopher looked at the neighbors, then at me, then at the approaching police cruisers. The realization hit him, but not the regret, just the panic. You called the cops on your own father," he hissed, his face crumbling from rage into a twisted mask of victimhood. "Over a car, over a stupid job." "Get away from me," I choked out, unbuckling my seatbelt and scrambling out, putting my body between him and the back door where my children were sobbing. 2 police cruisers screeched to a halt at the end of the driveway. 4 officers emerged, guns drawn but lowered, their voices sharp and professional. "Drop the weapon, drop the tire iron." "Hands in the air." Christopher looked at the tire iron in his hand as if he'd forgotten it was there. He dropped it. It clattered onto the concrete driveway, a heavy, metallic ring of finality. "Officers, please," Christopher yelled, raising his hands, instantly switching into his respectable community member persona. "It's a misunderstanding. It's a family dispute. I'm her father. I was just." She locked her keys in the car. I was helping her. "Step away from the woman, sir. Turn around, knees on the ground." They didn't buy it. They swarmed him. I watched, trembling, as my father, the man who had terrified me for 36 years, the man whose approval I had chased until I was breathless, was forced to his knees on the dirty asphalt of my driveway. "Louise," he shouted as they cuffed him. Tell them it's a mistake. Don't let them do this to me. Think about the family, think about your mother." I looked past him. My mother's car had just pulled up behind the police cruisers. Rachel stumbled out, her face pale as a sheet. She saw her husband in handcuffs, saw the shattered window of the car, saw her grandchildren crying in my arms as I pulled them from the back seat. "Christopher," she wailed, running toward the police line, but an officer held her back. "What is happening? Louise, what did you do?" I stood there, glass shards falling from my sweater, holding my shaking children. I looked at the neighbors watching from their lawns. I looked at the police officers. And finally, I looked at Mr. Henderson's face on the car display, still watching, still recording. "I didn't do this, Mom," I said, my voice loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "He did. He tried to carjack me with a tire iron in front of my kids because I wouldn't give his unemployed son my company car. He just wanted to help Kyle, Rachel sobbed, looking at Christopher, who was now being shoved into the back of a cruiser. He's your brother. He's a criminal, Mom, I yelled back, the dam finally breaking. And Dad is going to jail because he couldn't accept that I succeeded and Kyle failed. It's over. The lies are over. One of the officers approached me, a notepad in hand. Ma'am, are you injured? Do you want to press charges? I looked at the cruiser where Christopher was sitting, staring at me with eyes full of hate. He mouthed the word traitor. I took a deep breath, inhaling the sharp, cold air of freedom. Yes, I said clearly. He destroyed company property, he assaulted me, and he endangered my children. I want to press every single charge available. The following weeks were a blur of legal motions, restraining orders, and the slow, painful process of extracting a tumor from the center of my life. Mr. Henderson was a shark. He didn't just go after Christopher for the assault, he went after the narrative. The video footage from the dashcam was damning. It showed the premeditation, the weapon, the violence, and the unhinged entitlement. There was no family dispute defense when you're on camera screaming about how you own your adult daughter. Christopher was denied bail initially due to the violent nature of the threat against a witness. He spent 3 weeks in county jail, the first time in his life he had ever faced consequences he couldn't bully his way out of. Eventually, he pleaded guilty to aggravated assault and destruction of property to avoid a felony trial. He was sentenced to 6 months in prison, 2 years of probation, and mandatory anger management. But the real collapse happened to the king. With Christopher in jail and the family finances exposed, the house of cards Kyle lived in crumbled. The police investigation into the family dispute brought the forged loan application to light. Since the bank was federally insured, it wasn't just a family matter, it was bank fraud. Kyle tried to claim Christopher had authorized it, but Christopher, bitter and rotting in a jail cell, wasn't feeling so charitable anymore. In a twist of poetic justice, Christopher refused to corroborate Kyle's story to save his own skin, claiming he knew nothing about the signature. Kyle was arrested 2 weeks after Dad. He lost his truck, his apartment, and his reputation. The construction industry is a small world. Word got out that he was not only a thief, but the reason a senior director was attacked. He was blacklisted from every job site within 100 miles. The silence in my life was sudden, and at first it was deafening. But then it became peaceful. 3 months later, I sat in my living room. The window was fixed. The promotion was official. I was running the department, and for the first time, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. There was a knock at the door. I checked the camera. It was my mother. She looked 10 years older. She was living in a small apartment now. They had to sell the house to pay for the legal fees and the debts Kyle had racked up. She looked frail, defeated. I opened the door, but I didn't step back to let her in. Louise, she said softly. She held a Tupperware container, a peace offering. I made lasagna, the kids' favorite. I looked at the container, then at her. The kids aren't here, Mom. They're at a sleepover. She nodded, looking down at her shoes. I visited your father today. He blames you still. He says you ruined everything. I know he does. I don't, she whispered. I blinked, surprised. She looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. I went through the accounts, Louise. After the house was sold, I saw everything, the gambling, the bail money, the years of money I thought was going to investments. It was all going to Kyle. She let out a shuddering breath. You were the only one holding us up. You were the only one who actually worked, and we treated you like the villain. You did, I said simply. I wasn't going to offer her an easy out. I wasn't going to say it's okay. It wasn't okay. I know I can't fix it, she said, tears spilling over. I enabled him. I let him hurt you because I was too scared to stand up to him. I chose the wrong child, Louise. I bet everything on a lie, and I lost the daughter who was actually the truth. She held out the lasagna, her hand trembling. I'm leaving him. I filed the papers yesterday. I can't be with a man who would hurt you like that. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I just wanted you to know. I see you now. I finally see you. I looked at this woman, my mother, who was finally waking up from a 30-year slumber. The anger I had carried for so long softened, just a fraction. It wasn't full forgiveness. That would take years, maybe a lifetime, but it was a start. I took the lasagna. Thank you, I said quietly. I'm glad you're leaving him. That's a brave first step. Can I maybe see the kids sometime, in a park? Supervised, she asked, hope fragile in her voice. Not yet, I said firmly. I need time, they need time, but keep going to therapy, keep staying away from Dad, and maybe, in a few months, we can try a coffee. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Okay, that's fair. I'm proud of you, Louise, senior director. You did it all by yourself. I did, I smiled, and this time I felt it in my bones. I really did. I closed the door and walked back into my house, bought with my money, safe and warm and quiet. I walked into the kitchen and put the lasagna on the counter. My phone buzzed. It was an email from work, a new project proposal for a downtown skyscraper. I sat down, opened my laptop, and began to build.